Airtable or Google Sheets? In today's video, I'm going to be telling you why picking Airtable is an absolute no-brainer if you are thinking about building a no-code business. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Colin, and on this channel I help people who cannot code build their own businesses with no-code tools like Webflow, Airtable, and Zapier. Now, a question I get from a lot of people who are just getting into no-code and thinking about setting up their first little business is what database tool they should use. And specifically, they want to know if Google Sheets is a suitable tool to use as your no-code database. So I'm going to tell you straight away that I am going to be advocating very heavily for Airtable in this video. But whenever I make these videos comparing two tools to the other, you always have the people from the other camp coming out speaking out for that particular tool, which is why I want to clear up straight from the beginning that I actually love Google Sheets, and I actually use Google Sheets a lot for specific use cases. An example where I would use Google Sheets over, say, something like Airtable is for budgeting. So I've actually tried the whole budgeting thing inside of Airtable, and Google Sheets is just a better tool. So I am going to be going specifically over the use case of building a no-code business. So the criteria that I am going to be using to compare the two tools to each other are the factors that I consider most important when it comes to building a no-code database, which is firstly, it being very easy to visually see what's going on. Second of all, being able to trigger certain types of automations. And thirdly, being able to integrate with different types of tools. Now, before I get into it, if you haven't already, please do me a quick favor, subscribe to this channel. I make a whole bunch of no-code videos that will help you get your own no-code business set up. Also, if you are interested in more videos like this, then also like this video. First of all, it helps me understand that you're interested in this type of content, plus it lets other people who may not know about no-code find these videos, and it would be very much appreciated. But without further ado, let's get into the first point. So the first point that I want to make is that using Airtable, especially when working with a large amount of data, is just a lot easier to process visually than Google Sheets. So right now I have my skills table inside of the Unicorn Factory base, and you can see already that it has a whole bunch of different field types, for example checkboxes, it has drop downs that you can color, it also has links to other tables inside of my Airtable database, but most importantly it's very easy to get an overview of what's going on. This is the exact same table inside of Google Sheets, and so you can already tell that it's not as easy to keep an eye on what's going on with everything when compared to Airtable. I have found, especially as soon as you start dealing with a lot of data, you're going to run into situations where you just need to get a quick overview as to how certain things are working. For example, if I want to quickly see which of these records here are tools and which ones aren't, I can just scroll through here and see which one has tick boxes. Another thing that I can see is because I can link to other tables inside of my database, I can actually see how many case studies or freelancers are related to a specific skill. This is just currently not possible inside of Google Sheets, or at least as far as I know, it's not very easy to do. A big one for me especially is the icons or the images that I want to use, so I can kind of see what images are uploaded at any given time. Even though it's not super important for the skills table, it is most certainly important for other tables. For example, if I have cities and I want to have a preview card for that particular city. Besides just the visual aspect of it, Airtable also has a whole bunch of features that actually allows you to make it even easier to process data when you're looking through it all. For example, one thing that I just completely love is the grouping functionality. I can, for example, group all of these records based on specific fields inside of this table. So in this case, we'll say the expert table, and you can then quickly see how many records are inside of that particular category, and that just makes it a lot easier for you to kind of see what's going on. Now, if you wanted to do something similar inside of Google Sheets, then yes, it would be technically possible, but it would involve you having to do a lot of manual work, and that is just quite time consuming considering that you might have to make quite a few changes over time. Another thing that is really good about the different field types that you have inside of Airtable is that you can actually write text formulas that allow you to automatically create titles. Now, I made a video about this, so I'll link it in this video, but you can see here that instead of having to manually write out what the page titles are for each one of these skills that I then send to Webflow, I can actually just write a formula that then combines both the job title as well as my location, and therefore automatically creates my hero and page titles that I can then reuse later on in ads or on my website. Overall, I just feel like using Airtable takes quite a lot of the manual work out of the process that you'd otherwise have to do inside of Google Sheets. So the second point I want to make, and this is very specific to working in no code and automating workflows, is how easy it actually is to send data to different platforms that you're using. Now both Airtable and Google Sheets have integrations with Zapier, meaning that you can actually connect data from both tools to whatever other app that you're using. Now a lot of the workflows that I use on the Unicorn Factory are triggered by what's called views. So views are filtered versions of the original table where I can basically reflect a certain state of a record, for example in this case based on the status of the application. So you can see here I've got a whole bunch of stages, and based on the stage that someone who has applied to join the Unicorn Factory might be in, I might want to automate a different type of workflow. So what I have done is I've created a whole bunch of views that allow me to then use Zapier to trigger that workflow that then does things like send data from Airtable to Webflow or whatever other tool that I am using. Now, if you wanted to do the equivalent thing inside of Google Sheets, what you'd have to do is you would have to trigger it based on content being inside a certain field. So the trigger event here is called trigger when a new row is added or modified in a spreadsheet. And from what I have experience with it, there's just a lot that can go wrong with that. For example, if you change the order of the records, it can accidentally trigger automation that you don't want to trigger, and therefore using something like views is just a lot safer. So I've heard some pretty not so good stories about people's automation going wrong when using something like Google Sheets, and that is just basically because of the example that I provided before, where someone would accidentally change a record, change the sorting of a particular record, and that then triggering the entire workflow. Now, I'm not saying that that can't happen inside of Airtable, it definitely can, but there are a lot more controls that can stop those events from happening. While we're talking about automating things, another thing that is really awesome about Airtable is that they actually have their own internal automation tool, meaning that you don't actually need to use something like Zapier in order to connect to certain types of apps. Now, they definitely have less options available than, for example, Zapier, but if you want to set up some real basic things like post a tweet or add something to your Google Calendar, then you don't actually have to pay anything extra for another tool in order to make those workflows happen, which is very exciting. But in short, Airtable is probably the most important app that I have inside of my Zapier account. It's connected to 76 Zaps, and it's my go-to tool when it comes to automating any sorts of things in the no-code space. So the next thing that I really love about Airtable are their apps. And now the first app that they have that I started off with, which was really good just for data analytics and getting a bird's eye view of what's going on in your business, is all of their graph apps. So you can use all of the data that's stored inside of your table to quickly create graphs like this that give you a nice visual overview of how your business is going, how many freelancers you have in certain categories, and that just makes it a lot easier for you to make good decisions when it comes to making decisions around what you should be prioritizing inside of your business. Now, obviously, we all know that you can also create graphs out of data inside of Google Sheets, but again, here you're going to run into certain types of limitations that also involves quite a bit more work. So overall, the variety of options that Airtable gives you when it comes to creating graphs or pivot tables and things like that just makes the tool incredibly useful. Besides having graphs indicating how many records are in there, you can actually also create timelines. You can build different types of pie charts. And there are a lot of filters that you can apply to those particular graphs, so that makes it really easy for you to really create customized versions of these particular graphs, which again, I think would in theory be possible inside of Google Sheets, but it just takes a lot more work in order to get that up and running. So the next reason why I think that long-term Airtable is just going to be a significantly better choice as a database tool is just looking at where they're heading long-term. So there are two big things that they launched over the last 6 months. One is apps that are created by third-party developers and scripts. So the Airtable apps offer a variety of things. So for example, you have the SendGrid app inside of Airtable that allows you to send emails to your contacts inside of Airtable directly out of the actual tool. You also have cool little things like a world clock if that's something that you need, calendar imports. You can also do your Google Hangouts from directly inside of Airtable. You can do lead enrichment with tools from Clearbit. So there are just a whole bunch of things that Airtable has already added to their app database that just allows you to do a whole bunch of additional things inside of the tool. One thing that has just been an absolute game changer is all of those apps that I just showed you were actually created by Airtable, but now they've actually opened it up to third-party developers who have now started building integrations that solve very specific use cases. One of those is FinTable. I actually watched a video about FinTable the other day on the Automate All the Things YouTube channel that you should definitely check out if you haven't already. Of course, we have Noble, which I made a video about on this channel that basically allows you to sync your Airtable database with Webflow. It's a complete game changer, friends. You must check it out. And then we also have things like mini extension forms, which I haven't made a video about on this channel yet, but it just allows you to do a whole bunch of really cool things. In short, they are now allowing third-party developers to solve a whole bunch of use cases that are very specific to things that happen in the no-code space. So anyone that works with the Airtable, Webflow, and Zapier stack will be looked after, because Airtable is a very heavily used tool in this space, and now developers are coming out and solving for specific use cases that you currently can't do with tools like Zapier or Integromat. Another thing that is just completely scary is scripts. So scripts is basically a way that you can actually code that allows you to build your own custom workflows if any of the apps that you want to use don't exist yet. So of course you need to know how to code in order to create custom scripts, but people have already gone out and started creating scripts that they're sharing with the community, and they do a whole bunch of really useful things that currently apps haven't been created for. A real big one is, for example, automatically deleting duplicates. Now that is something that can come up when you have something like a sign up form and someone signs up multiple times with the same email address. Now being able to quickly write a script that finds and removes duplicates is a huge time saver. It also has things like the ability to convert URLs into attachments. You can also do like bulk find and replace. In short, there's just a whole bunch of things that you can now do with code that solves a whole bunch of use cases, and that's really where Airtable is separating itself from the competition. So again, I just want to be super clear that I actually really enjoy Google Sheets. I, for example, use it as my main budgeting tool, and I also tried to set up a budgeting tool inside of Airtable, and I just found that Google Sheets was a better option. But when it comes to building a database for your no-code business, you're going to want to have something that can handle large amounts of data, that is visual, and allows you to automate with different types of platforms. And when it comes to those key things, Airtable is just completely untouchable. Another big thing that you have to factor in when trying to decide what no-code database tool to use is kind of where they're heading in the future. Now, just based on where they are right now and the trajectory that each of those two tools have, you must say that Airtable is just in a league of its own. The fact that they have opened it up to third-party developers means that there are just a lot more developers out there now that can solve for specific use cases in the no-code space. A great example of that is just looking at what FinSuite did with Noble. Now, that was something that Airtable was just not going to build themselves internally, because probably not that many customers actually use Webflow. However, Noble recognized that there is a large amount of people that use Airtable as their main database tool, and therefore built that integration. Just based on that, I think that we're going to see a lot more developers coming out and solving specific use cases in the no-code space. And now let's just lastly talk about pricing, because I know it comes up from time to time. Obviously, Google Sheets is free, and if that is such a big factor, then I would definitely just go with Google Sheets. But I must honestly say that out of all the no-code tools that I use, I find that Airtable is probably the most reasonably priced. I mean, obviously, as soon as you start adding more and more people to the plan, it's an additional $24 a month, which can add up, to be fair. But honestly, when compared to tools like Zapier that I'm already paying about $150 a month, it's really a steal. So really, the whole point of this video was really to just answer the question whether or not Google Sheets is a suitable tool for no-code databases. And honestly, it's not that Google Sheets is not the right tool, it's more that Airtable is just on a level that it's very hard to compete with now and in the future. So honestly, I think that that is an investment worth making. Other than that, thank you so much for sticking around for this video. I mean, if you agree with me, please leave a like on this video. If you don't agree with me, please let me know in the comments down below what your main arguments are for another no-code database. Obviously, there are other ones out there as well. I'd love to hear what your reasons are. I'm always open to changing my mind, so please let me know. Other than that, I'll see you back here for the next one.